In this last weekend, we were living an encounter of the farming group. And there is a small report that ends saying that the development of the work counted with the force of everyone who participated, and that the activities of farming moved many levels of participation: the basic group, workers, collaborators, the support group, the group of direct contact. And when they felt that there was a disposition to recognize new stages to be fulfilled. And by the report, we can see that the most physical part of the task flowed without obstacles and without hurdles. And that the abundance of harvest also indicates this. So the report, at the end of it, asks if all the material aspect is so well, if the sector is so well developed and mature from the point of view of what they had as an objective in the material aspect, what are the new tasks to be developed? The report ends with a question. So there are items in the report that speak of the introduction of mantras in the group work that gave a new sense to this activity. And as these chants were sung before the practical work, created a current of life, and many obstacles, many practical obstacles were dissolved. And the task was very noticeable. It became more light. It also speaks of the subtle regeneration of the soil that will happen and have its beginning on the 3rd of March, and the first tests were made. And all is prepared to begin this work of revitalization of the soil that is showing new horizons for more subtle works, as we saw in a previous meeting here. Mainly, when we deal with farming and when we deal with more contact and work with plants, with life beings of a different kingdom, we would have to pay attention to a point that we need to deepen in our consciousness and not to stay only on a physical consciousness, mainly when you're dealing with plants. If we cultivate the plants, if we work with the plant kingdom only with practical purposes, then we lose the real contact with plants. Then we produce more, but we distance from the kingdom. Mainly in this period, in this time of the earth, in this moment of transition, in which the plant kingdom is also in transition, the plant kingdom is under judgment, just like the human kingdom. There's a selection in the plant kingdom. The plant kingdom is going through a holocaust, as we can see by the treatment that it receives from everything that happens to it. And there is a reorganization, a reassignment in this kingdom. Many plants are dying. Many plants are disappearing from the physical plane, as we know. Others fulfill their trajectory and they move to more subtle planes that will be transmuted into different groups and different species and will continue their evolution in other worlds or in other dimensions of this same world after this earth will be reordered. So this is the moment, very propitious, to get to know in a more deep way certain peculiarities of the evolutionary plan in what it's to do with plants. So if the practical tasks are so well developed, is flowing so well, it means that there is a spiritual alignment in this sector. If this alignment exists, so much so that it attracts so many groups of collaboration, and as the report says, 90% of the tasks, even in the rainy season, are accomplished. They're ready. That's an extraordinary percentage with everything that happens. So there is already a spiritual alignment. Otherwise, things could not be like this. So this is the moment of us examine how are we in front of this kingdom so that this alignment can be deepened even more and as that we can, as a next step, to get to know these plants better. To get to know these plants better means that we perceive when the time comes for a plant or a species to disappear, and what can we do in front? What can we do as in a positive, in the collaboration of the new plant kingdom? So much so that the farming group is going to set up a seed house just to look after seeds, because there are many topics with the seeds that need to be better resolved. So, in the midst of this plant kingdom, there are many things to be resolved, many things to be talked about spiritually. But if our consciousness doesn't focus only on the physical, but is focused also on the other levels of the plant kingdom and other levels of our own being, not only on our physical body, because it's very easy to deviate of the work and to do farming just to actually feed ourselves. That's very easy to take this detour. But it's important that we deal with this kingdom not just with a physical consciousness in us and with this kingdom. There's a small example of what is to be in front of this kingdom, not only with a physical consciousness. There's a story that says that there was a hermit who would feed only from leaves and herbs, and with that he lived. So they asked him, "Why are you doing this?" And he answered that very few people would give, because who eats herbs and leaves would have many answers for this. But he answered the following: to love you better. You see the difference between a vegetarian, somebody who loves nature, and someone who's in a different point, on a different level. I eat herbs and leaves to love you better. It's all said. And that love that is reflected also in the way that you treat the kingdom, in the way you relate to it, to everything that's alive. Because what is in life is to evolve as life. It's not to be exploited or not to be used only. It's there because it's life. It's alive. It has a life there that is developing. As every farming activity in the planet does not go in this direction and goes in the way of exploitation, so it's very important that we go against the current in this sense, that we don't do that to explore, that we do this only to do physical and external reasons, but we do this for the love of life, for life, for the love of life. So then there will be a response that we don't know what it is because we cannot imagine these things. There will be a response beyond the one that has been given. So the answer for the alignment of this sector has not to lack food here. So the response of the group has been to construct everything in an orderly way, in a developed way, and doing well for everybody. But there's more responses to be given. And we can other knowledge, not only about the existing plants, but also to participate in this new plant life, collaborating with this plant life. In the past, there were plants that would act on the bodies and would resolve the problems of the bodies. This is in the past. In the past, there were plants that had the function of healing cancer. Plants, simply. So, in the past, there was a knowledge of all of this, very deep, because medicine and the philosophers, maybe, were approaching this kingdom as life and not out of interest. So they even discovered the remedy for cancer, something that is lost now, and we don't even know where it is, the solution. And like this, for many things, they discovered many things of what plants can give. But afterwards, the time changed because the relationship of man with the plant kingdom was deteriorated, and at the same time, an activity started, a healing activity within man that also depends on him. So everything that the plants would do by themselves, today, they don't have the authorization in the evolutionary plan to do by themselves. Today, if a person has cancer and would find the formula and would eat that plant, maybe it would not resolve today as it resolved in the past. Because today, every person needs to do this process in himself or herself and to have the collaboration of the other kingdom. So the plant kingdom is not anymore with the task to resolve all our problems. This is what's in the past. It's not anymore. In this movement, in this cycle, the plant kingdom is here to complement our work, our inner work. So the influence of plants over us and our influence on plants turned more subtle of what was before, is more subtle, is not only a material relationship. And today,
natureza continua
nature continues
ao redor
to place around us
necessário
everything that is necessary for us to serve from the plants
colocando ao nosso redor
and to continues to place around us
mais adequadas,
the most adequate plants,
mais corretas,
the most correct plants for our energy,
versa,
and vice versa.
nós estamos perdendo
And we are losing
nós estamos
this dimension.
este conhecimento,
We're losing this knowledge
assim como vimos
because
desenvolvendo muito certas
as we are developing
dias e certos
technologies and understandings, farming, material knowledge, we're interfering.
conferindo nesta combinação
We're interfering in this combination
e o reino
that nature and the plant kingdom make around us.
estamos interferindo nisso
We're interfering in this
nossa mente,
with our minds,
processo,
with our processes,
porque o nosso papel
because our role
de compor
is not to make an environment from a point of view of the farming.
é principalmente
Our role is to observe what nature and what the plant kingdom is doing there, what it is bringing there, what is creating there.
nosso papel
And our role
ter as
is to keep the right proportions there,
entrar com equilíbrio,
is to get in with balance,
porções,
with
é entrar com
the proportions,
ação,
with the collaboration,
é mudar.
is not to change what nature does.
Claro que
Of course,
quando se formam grandes grupos,
when large groups are formed
desenvolvem muito
and when things are developed in great numbers and numerically, all these things get lost.
então, se grupo aumenta muito,
And so if a group gets too big and the population gets too large,
realmente, o que a natureza
probably
combinou ali,
what nature combined there, what it organized there,
criou ali,
what nature created there,
não supra
may not supply certain external needs.
esta proporção
So the proportion that men would have to work and establish is lost.
porque fica-se atrás,
Is lost because you're after a large quantity.
porque fica-se atrás da necessidade
You're running after the need of a large production.
que nós temos que ter muito cuidado.
So this is why we have to be so careful so that a spiritual work of quality does not get too vast, too large, that it doesn't grow too much in numbers,
Cheio de
that is not full of curious people, that is frequented by people who do not come by the inner and spiritual reasons for why this is happening. In the plantations, this is very important. So for us to keep
equilíbrio destes
a balance
se chegou no
in which they reached here in the farming group and their own group is unsatisfied about it because they're asking to actually take new steps. So the new steps are these, that we keep the right proportions, that we don't lose the meaning of proportion,
porque se as coisas seguirem
because if things
hoje o que se segue
will
hoje,
will follow what everybody follows today, all these subtle things, these inner and spiritual, ordered,
valiosas,
valuable things will get lost.
na hora de você
Because
ser as
by the time that you establish the proportions
plantar,
of what to plant, what to harvest, what to keep, what to distribute, what to donate,
vender, nem
we're not even speaking about selling.
então aí para você
So for you
todas estas
to have all these
corretas,
right proportions,
é preciso em princípio que
it's
você
important
não esteja somente
that you
consciência
are not just with your physical consciousness in front of this, only with your material worries,
cálculos materiais.
only with calculations that are all very needed,
Não é só isso.
but are not, is not just this.
E como nós somos uma raça mental
And as we are a mental race, and the soul, up to just a little bit, was on a mental level from the most developed of from us. As the race is mental,
E alguma coisa sutil
then there's something subtle
com o pensamento.
that needs to happen with our thinking in all this work.
E aqui então, além
So,
de nós estarmos fazendo
beyond
isto por amor
us
à vida,
doing this for the love of life and not out of interest, material and physical interest,
mas pela vida,
but for life,
glória à vida,
in glory to life,
amor a uma vida que aí
and to love of a life that is being developed in the vegetables, in this case,
temos que ter também
we also need to have
a vigilância
a certain vigilance
que acontece na nossa mente.
in what happens with our minds.
Tá? A nossa mente humana.
How is our human mind?
Porque se na nossa mente humana
Because if in our human mind
abrigando
we would be holding destructive thoughts, negative ideas,
discórdia
or discord ideas, we will not get in
interna nesta
this inner, more subtle
vegetal,
part of this plant kingdom and deal with these things.
o reino vegetal
The plant kingdom
diretamente ligado
is directly linked, permanently linked, with the elemental and devic kingdom.
e certos elementais
And there are certain elementals
devas
and certain divas
para estarem presentes
that to be present
numa plantação,
in a plantation, for example,
inteiro,
in a garden bed,
presentes numa planta,
in a plant,
eles necessitam
they need
do ambiente
certain environment
no interno, no plano
in the inner planes, in the subtle planes.
homem,
And man
este ambiente
propício can create this propitious space and create this space that will welcome the elementals,
colhe
that will welcome the devas.
que o homem cria hoje,
This environment that man creates is with his mind, is the quality of what he radiates with his mind.
como se, veja, se
So,
fosse mundo ordenado,
if this world would be an ordered world, if this world would be something which is not, then people
diante do reino,
would be in front of the plant kingdom, collaborating with this plant kingdom with their minds, having certain thoughts and not a common thought,
pensamento
having a loving thought, a positive thinking,
de união,
a thought of unity, and this will welcome the elementals and divas
não tem
that today
caminho muito aberto,
don't have a very open path to be here.
ambiente muito acolhedor,
They don't have a very welcoming environment to be here.
certas mudanças,
So there are certain changes, certain transmutations, certain transformations that are not happening as they could be in the plan, because these parallel kingdoms that could be helping much more,
bases para fazer,
they don't have the basis where to do that.
são poucas.
The bases are very few.
Uma das nossas tarefas
So one of our tasks in this farming sector
continuar
is not just
fazendo até agora.
to continue what we're doing up to now, but to look after and to care for how is our thinking, how are our thoughts,
De não ter esse reino vegetal
also from
objeto de exploração,
first not having the plant kingdom as a purpose of exploitation, but also to have our mind in a certain level of quality,
transformações
so that all the transformations that can happen in this kingdom, the transmigration, our cooperation with all this process,
podemos compreendendo
that we will understand
trabalho,
as we do this process,
nossa mente
then our mind,
ficar a uma certa altura
up to a certain
de ver
point, will be surprised
entrar
on how it can enter in certain aspects of this kingdom that until now qualities of plants that serve the maladies of today.
plantas estão aí,
And the plants are there, but with the common thinking, with the normal mind,
não se faz
we can't make this contact. This cannot happen. The inspiration will not come, will not happen. So to form this base
base para que este reino possa
for this kingdom to be able to continue its work of transformation,
estado da nossa mente
the state of our mind
muito fundamental,
is fundamental and very basic.
passo,
This is a step that all of us,
especialmente aqui
but especially those who are dealing with plant,
com estas plantas
dealing
e que necessitam
with the farming, and at this time
contato mais
need to be in a more intimate contact, with an inner contact with these plants to help them to live this moment and to develop, and they also to be able to help us and to stay here in good conditions.
então esta revisão
This revision
está
in how
pensamento
our thinking is,
que o nosso pensamento
In-
está enfocado,
what is our thoughts are focused on, what is our mind involved with.
para que
This is fundamental for this sector
só lidando bem com estas
will deal not only with plants
material
on a material and external way, but could also commune with this kingdom and this sector
deste setor
so that this kingdom and this sector and these plants could
passar para aqueles que estão
pass on to different planes
estas informações
and to pass on this information that are so necessary for certain balances
equilíbrios
of rebalancing
alimentos médicos
as
como possam
the
ser alguns medicamentos
medical procedures, medications,
que as plantas
and so many other things that plants can serve
é muito
for.
importante além da qualidade
This is very important. Beyond the quality of the thinking and how our thoughts are, what is in our minds
olha quanto
while we work,
né, a qualidade do pensamento
the quality of thinking
muito importante
is very important
ultrapassa
here.
o paciente
Is as important as the thinking is the patience, the patient attitudes, moderate attitudes,
atitude extremada
nothing extreme,
são
moderation, patience,
a ausência de irritação
the lack of irritation,
do compõe
all of this makes this
vai fazer com que
link,
movimento de plantio
makes possible that this movement of plantations will deepen.
já estavam
And in the report, they themselves perceive the difference
percebendo nos mutirões
in the environment
que se começou a
with the collective work when the mantras were sung.
trabalho a ser feito
So a work needs to happen here in the patience, the thinking, the persistence, with the faith, with all these qualities
mudar
that will change completely
o relacionamento com esse reino,
our relationship with this kingdom
o nosso relacionamento
and will change even more the relationship with this kingdom, which is very important
estamos procurando
in this moment when we're searching for the right revitalization of the earth.
vai se dar
The regeneration of the earth will not happen because you place products on it. The more products you place on the earth will die even more.
a terra vai desencarnar. Não
Saying the life on earth is not a thing of placing products. This is what matters. This is what needs to happen behind the scenes in our work of regeneration. So then when you use the product, this will have a different value.
outra atuação.
This will have a different performance.
Além desta paciência,
So besides the patience, the lack of irritation,
pensamento
the quality of thinking
muito importante
that is so important
passo
to take a step in this moment
é também nós
is also
estarmos
not
vacilando.
to hesitate
Estamos tratando com
when we are working with these kingdoms.
vacilação ali,
Because the doubt,
falta de decisão
the lack of decision-making processes in assuming a task, the hesitation in the decisions that we make,
nas orientações.
the hesitation in the orientations that you give to things will have to be avoided.
As decisões deveriam ser firmes,
The decisions need to be firm.
que forem resolvidas, que forem
The things that we resolve make, they need to happen with firmness, more than what they are, in the consciousness of all, not only of those who are heads of the sector, but of all of us, all the collaborators. So this is why we're talking about this now, because this is a step that we as a group need to take in our relationship with the plant kingdom, not in the quality of what we do, but with these things that need to come in. Is these attitudes, these states need to be so present in the same way as a hoe or a hose for watering the plants, or the same as the compost is present. These need to be present together with all these things. This is the step that we need to take. So here the development of a contact with the plant kingdom in these times when the kingdoms are under judgment, when the earth is renewing, new vegetables, new minerals are surging, are appearing in the inner planes. This is the moment when we are not just with hoes and tractors and materials and fertilizers, but with all this, equipped with all of this, prepared to deal with non-physical aspects of this matter, of non-physical aspects of food. When I was making notes for all of this, it came to my mind something that I witnessed one time. There was somebody who I knew who was completely depleted, very devitalized. This person moved away from the city and went to live in a space that had space for a garden bed. And when everybody thought that she had done that, to actually reach that place to lay down, because she was so depleted, to lie down and to be served, she reached that space and chose a place where she could grow plants. She got the hoe, and she actually created a garden, a vegetable garden. And she said that if it was not for this vegetable garden that during the weeks gave her food, and she innerly knew that she would not come out of that state of depletion if it was not for this garden. Of course, it was not only the leaves of salad and the carrots by themselves. There's also a part of the individual. There's a decision that comes from the individual, something that comes from the inner planes from the individual, a process of the individual. That is, the individual assumes, and then the plant kingdom comes completely to the encounter, because cooperation, even with the planetary situation, has not died. This cooperation is still available. It's still in the evolutionary plan, this cooperation between the kingdoms. So this has to be very alive. And the fact that we have here a task of feeding hundreds of people every day, this should not disturb us in our real intention, in our real purpose of this work here. Because if we lose the perspective, if we lose these spiritual points, I don't know if we will be able to feed hundreds of people here. Because here, there are not material circumstances, natural circumstances for all of this. Here, other factors come in. Other helps come in. Other components come in. Because we are not specialized in agriculture or any of it. We have a working force that is well dimensioned, is balanced, has no surplus, is well dimensioned for our case, and we have a land that was recuperated, that was an inner process that accompanies all of this. And you see the results of all of this on how many years it took us for this to happen. When we reached this land, when they were pastures, when we arrived, we got the greatest extensions of land, and we said, this would be a preserved forest. And they were untouched when there was nothing planted. So it was not the ambition to have land for planting. We did not mark first the land that we were going to plant. We actually marked first the plants that will rest, that will remain in peace. The areas we will not come in, that we will not incommodate the plants that were living there. And those were the largest extensions of land. Only after marking all of that and to see that this would be all the reserved areas, and then we looked at all that was left over, and when we saw all what was left over, we started to plant. And of course, the response came. The response came, and we see from all the investigations that the response came, because the plant kingdom is becoming more interiorized, is becoming more subtle. What we see here in the physical plane, everything that was rescued is going to etheric planes. Everything is moving onto etheric planes, and some others will come to supply the more dense physical aspects. So we need to accompany with our consciousness, because our karma with the plant kingdom, our positive karma, our karma is with this kingdom that is becoming more inner. That's a different cycle. What's surging today is a different cycle. It's for those who will inhabit the earth and in a future stage. So the karma that is now here is the collaboration is the immediate collaboration is with this kingdom that is in transition, just like ours is in transition. For us to understand what this plant is, what this kingdom is doing, and to live together with this kingdom, for this kingdom to be with us and us with them in the name of life, if this kingdom is becoming more subtle, is because you can see that the more noble trees are disappearing. Where are the cedars? Where are the medicinal herbs that cannot be found anymore? Where are the alpine flowers? Where are the noble species of the plant kingdom? They are not anymore. There's a symbol there. Sometimes there's symbols because sometimes they have to be here until the end, but they have moved to a different plane. And where are we? Where are we? Where is our consciousness? Because these kingdoms are evolving. The kingdoms that are contemporary to us, they're all moving to the inner planes. They're becoming more subtle. And the way that we can accompany this and not to get lost in this process and debating with experiences in genetical experiences in laboratories and not to remain at this point, we need to accompany this movement. And this is a move of becoming more interiorized, of inner comprehension of things. I'm talking about plants, but I could be talking about water, I could be talking about anything, metal, I could be talking of any other thing. Today, if you remain in the physical, if you remain in matter, if you make a contact only from the use that you can get out of things, then you lose the contact with that. That, even if it has all the possibilities, the latent possibilities to serve our bodies or our life, that remains separated due to the lack of accompaniment, or our inability to accompany this becoming more subtle and the inner move of this kingdom. So how we stay in front of our tables, in front of food. Because if we come close to the table only from the material aspect of it, without the inner contact with the essence of it, without the gratitude, without the respect, without the fraternal union, this will not cooperate for the steps that we need to take. And so we reach in a moment when that is not enough just for the group of the farming that will have consciousness of all of this. It's not enough that this group will have the consciousness of this. In this moment, we all have to have this consciousness. And that we're not only serving from the produce of the farming group, but because as long as we do not serve ourselves from this in the way, with the attitude that we need to be serving ourselves, and how we're collaborating with this, what are we emanating with our minds in general with our lives? What are we doing with our minds? What are we doing with our feelings? What are we doing with our attitudes? And in this moment is with all of us. It is not just with the farming group. This is to do with all of us. For all of us to be able to take steps and reach this development. Today, any vegetable, any being from the plant kingdom is very susceptible to changes, is very susceptible to alterations. So a plantation, a tree, a plant is much more open than before from what we emanate. So we can even influence the perfume of a flower more than before. So our responsibility is greater. And this is a qualitative work. It's not a quantitative work. It's qualitative. We saw in a previous meeting, and it was indicated to us, that we needed to do small garden beds of medicinal herbs and to observe the herbs and to observe what herbs would naturally will spring, will come in the areas where the bees were, where the beehives are. And we saw that this was not a work to be done in large areas. It had to do a small quantity. So we cannot lose the sense of quality even when we plant in larger quantities as is sometimes necessary. But we need to do with the right proportions because the kingdom does it all. The miracle does the rest, as here, because this is a miracle. It's unconceivable in the world of today what happens here. So miracle does the rest. But the proportions of what happens here, the measurements of what happens here, depends directly on us, depends on the group, depends on the consciousness of who is here dealing with this.